What is up, everybody? I'm so incredibly excited to share this very special Mother's Day video with you guys. I've got some songs planned. I've got a couple stories planned, and I hope you'll stick around. Don't go nowhere. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. But I'm thankful for my mom always standing in the gap and praying for me no matter what I was walking through, whether it be addiction, struggles in life. She's always there to speak a scripture and speak the word and speak life and pray. She stood in the gap and she prayed for her family. She was a praying mama. And so to all the praying moms out there, I just want to tell you, don't give up praying. God hears those prayers. Continue praying for your kids. Continue praying for your nephews and your nieces, for your spouse, for your sisters, for your brothers, for your family, your circle of influence. Continue praying for your communities. God hears the prayers of a mother, and he hears and he sees those cries. And so thank you to all the moms out there that just carry on so strong, standing in the gap for their family. And I hope that this video blesses you today. And to all the husbands, spouses, fathers, leaders, brothers, sons, if you're watching this right now, share this video with a mom today. It's going to bless her. Share this video with your mom if you want to. I'm going to just share from my point of view and the incredible journey that I have had, and with my mother and the way that she has spoke into my life, and how very thankful I am for the prayers of a mama. But first, I want to share this powerful story of how a mom prayed to see her son one last time, and it's called A Mother's Prayer. All right, so I wanted to share this story with you guys before I sing this song, Somebody Prayed. This story is about a grateful man. His name is Peter Richley, and he's on his way to Australia because he wants to see his mother that he hasn't seen for many years. But he ends up going through, there's just a weird turn of events that he goes through, and what's incredible about all of it is it's a true story. So the year is 1820. Let me just paint this picture for you. The year is 1820. Just imagine Peter Richley is needing to get to Australia. He finds a ship and he boards this ship, and he starts heading to Australia, and the ship sinks. And so now Peter finds himself out in the water floating. Everybody had died, all of the crewmen, all of the passengers, and he's the only one that has survived, and he's out in the water floating, and a second ship comes along and saves and rescues Peter Richley. And so he tells them that he's headed to Australia, and then one thing leads to another, and this second ship sinks. And so now Peter's back in the water, and this goes on and on. A third ship sinks, a fourth ship sinks, and believe it or not, a fifth ship sinks. I mean, I couldn't even believe what I was reading at this point. Then here comes the next ship. It sees Peter floating in the water, and by this point, Peter is like, man, if God has saved me through 5 ships sinking, then obviously the enemy can't take me out. Obviously, he's got some sort of purpose and plan for me. And so he trusted that God was going to save him out in the water. And so this 6th ship comes along and sees him out in the water, pulls him up, rescues him, gives him warm clothes, gives him a blanket, or dry clothes and a warm blanket, and gets him settled. They send him into the medical and through that protocol, and make sure that he's okay and that he's healthy. And they do all of the things, all of the necessary things that they need to do to get this man back to a stable condition. And so Peter is in the room, is in stable condition, and the captain comes up to him and he says, Peter, I would like to ask you a favor. And Peter's like, sure, Captain, what is it? You've literally saved my life, like anything, you name it. And the captain says something kind of strange. He says, there's an elderly woman on this boat, and she has been on here the entire time. She's headed to Australia, and she has won over the hearts of all of the crewmen. Like, she has been telling jokes, telling stories. They've been laughing and just carrying on, and she has literally just won the hearts of everybody on the boat. And this woman has talked nonstop about she needs to see her son one more time. She just wants to see her son, that he had disappeared many years ago. And he said, the problem is she fell deathly sick. She's got a bad fever. She's in and out of consciousness. And she knows all of the crewmen from spending time with them. She knows what they look like. But she doesn't know what you look like because you're new. We just rescued you. And so what I'm asking is, could you find it in your heart, Peter, to go down to this room and see this elderly woman and just pretend to be her son? She's on her way out, and I think it would bring her so much peace because it's all she talked about. Could you do that for us? And Peter looks up at the captain and he's like, man, it would be an honor to do that. He's like, you saved my life. It's the least that I can do. And so the captain walks Peter down this hallway, and they get to this room, and they go into this room, and there's this woman, this elderly woman, gray hair, laying in the bed. She's still in and out of consciousness. And as they were even on their way down through the hallway, they could hear her crying out, God, please just let me see my son one more time. God, once more. Father, please let me see my son one more time, in and out of consciousness. And so they get to the room, and Peter gets in there, and he looks at this woman, and he literally falls to his knees, and he begins sobbing. He begins crying and weeping uncontrollably, and the captain is like looking at him like, what in the world is going on? Peter looks up at the captain with tears in his eyes, and he says, this is my mother, Sarah Richley. And then Peter looks over at his mom, and he says, Mom, I'm here. I'm here. God must have heard your prayers, Mom. I'm here. And this is just a powerful story. It's an incredible picture of the power of a praying mom. This guy threw 6 ships. I mean, the enemy could not take this guy out. God was going to get him exactly where he needed to be at the right appointed time, and the enemy couldn't do anything because there was a mom that was praying, God, let me see my son one more time. And so that's the power of a praying mom. And I just want to encourage you, all of you moms out there, pray for your kids. Don't ever give up. I am living proof of this. Don't ever give up praying for your kids, for your family, for your nieces. Pray for your community. Pray for your family. God hears the power of a mother's prayer. And so Peter Richley and Sarah Richley, she gets better. The fever breaks, and they go on to Australia. And it's such an incredible, happy ending to this story. Through all of the struggle, through all of these crazy turn of events and circumstances, God needed to get Peter right where he needed to be in order to see his mom one more time, because God heard the prayers of a praying mama. This song's called Somebody Prayed. I don't know how I made it here. Too many nights I should have disappeared, but Mama kept talking to God on her knees. Somehow mercy found me. I should have been gone, should have been lost, but I'm standing here and I know the cost. Ain't my strength, ain't my way. It's 'cause somebody prayed when I was broken, and somebody prayed when I was lost. Heaven moved when they called his name. It's the reason I'm standing today. I'm living proof of grace, 'cause somebody prayed. All the nights I was running wild, somebody cried out for their child. And even when I turned away, the prayer still carried my name. When the storm was heavy, He carried me through. When I hit rock bottom, His love pulled me through. I ain't here 'cause of luck or chance. It's the power of a faithful hand. Somebody prayed when I was broken, and somebody prayed when I was lost. Heaven moved when they called His name. It's the reason I'm standing today. I'm living proof of grace, 'cause somebody prayed. Oh, thank God somebody prayed. Somebody prayed when I was broken. Somebody prayed when I was lost. Heaven moved when they called His name. It's the reason I'm standing today. I'm living proof of grace. Yeah, I'm living proof of grace, 'cause somebody prayed. Man, what an incredible song and awesome lyrics to say, somebody prayed when I was broken. Somebody prayed when I was lost. I know that I'm so thankful that in my brokenness, in my struggles, in my addictions, that my mom and that other people in my family and in my circle that were praying for me, that were lifting me up, that weren't afraid to push aside a meal or push aside an activity to drop to their knees and lift you up in prayer and lift me up in prayer. And I'm forever grateful and thankful for that. I want to share, just as this story about Peter Richley and his mom praying for him continuously, I also have a story of where my mom was speaking life and scripture and speaking and lifting me up in prayer and standing in the gap and praying for her son. And my dad was lifting me up, and they were agreeing together that God was going to bring me out of these things and out of these addictions and out of these struggles. And I'm just forever grateful for that. I wrote a song called Greater Is He through all of this, but I want to share a little bit of this story with you. It started really back in the state of Maryland. I lived in Baltimore, Maryland, and I grew up in church. I grew up going to Sunday school and singing all of those wonderful Sunday school songs. And I remember sleeping underneath the pews, going to church, and I would kick mom's legs and aggravate her as she's sitting there listening to the pastor preach. And I was dedicated, literally held up and dedicated to God in church as a baby. And then I was saved, and then I was baptized. And by all means, I mean, my parents had led us kids and done everything right, training us up in the way to go in the scripture and the word. And there was no reason for what I'm about to share next to happen. They did all of the right things. And so this is a lesson to anybody out there listening, to say that you can do all of the right things. You can train your kids up and do all that you know to do, but then they have their own choices that they make. And what happened was I got involved with the wrong crew. Around the year 2000, I remember that I was with my dad. We were going to the movie theater to watch a movie, and I was really excited to go see a movie with Dad. And we got to the movies, we got settled, we got some popcorn, we got some soda and all candy and all the good stuff. And as we're sitting there preparing to watch this movie, I got a sharp pain in my stomach that it literally made me like curl over. I couldn't move. I was hunched over. I could not get up. It was so piercing and painful that I couldn't move. So Dad had to literally throw me over his back, and he carried me out to the car, and he rushed me to the hospital. Instead of calling an ambulance, he just took me quick. We got there. The doctors came out to Dad and said he was seconds away from his appendix, like exploding basically, or imploding, whatever. But seconds away from that happening, and he could have got sepsis and got infection. You got him here just in time. And so while I know that this is a very common surgery. The fact that it was in the stage that it was a little bit more advanced. And so they did the surgery. I got done with that. And I just remember they prescribed me pain medicine. And mom and dad, they're not thinking, they're thinking I just went through surgery. I'm going to need this medicine. And so I began taking this medicine. And all of a sudden, I remember that first pill that I took and the way that it made me feel and the way that it numbed everything. And you got to understand, at this point, I'm 18 years old. I'm looking at my future in college and what I want to do in life and career and what other people think that I should be, what I'm thinking that I should be. And so when I took this medicine, it numbed all of that. It numbed my mind to the world around me. It numbed my mind to thinking about the future and all of the expectations that were on me. And it just numbed me. And to be completely honest with you, I loved it. I liked it. I liked to be numb to all of that. I didn't want to worry about it. I didn't want to be concerned about my future and everything. And so all the while I'm taking this and being numb to everything around me, and the enemy is literally roping me in, hook, line, and sinker, deeper and deeper and deeper into addiction. I didn't even realize it until one day I wake up and I'm so addicted that at this point, it's not even a matter of taking it for the feeling. It's taking it just to get back to a place of normalcy. I'm taking medicine now and drinking and using drugs and alcohol just to get me back to a place of feeling normal. How pathetic and embarrassing is that? But this is a chain. This is bondage that the enemy uses against us with addiction, and it's awful and it's hard to break out of. And so fast forward, my parents see how bad it's getting. At this point, Dad had purchased a car for me. It was my favorite car. It was a 91 red Honda Civic hatchback. And I loved this car. It was like a little go-kart. It was a little stick shift car. And I just remember I came home one day and this car was on the back of a U-Haul trailer. And I remember Dad coming out and he looked at me and he said, "Son, if you want this car, you're moving to Tennessee with us." He said, "If not, you're an adult. You can stay here, find a place to live, but the car goes with us." And so I thought they were crazy. I thought they had lost it. They had lost their mind following God and doing what God is putting on their heart to do. And now looking back, I'm like, man, that was the greatest move ever. I was so involved with the wrong crowd and the wrong people and getting involved in drugs and alcohol that I wouldn't have made it. I know that I wouldn't have survived it. And so we get to Tennessee. The whole way I'm thinking they're crazy. Dad took out his 401k, took out his retirement to get their son away from this environment, literally to get me away from all of this junk that I was going through. And they saw the seriousness of it. And they moved on it. They acted no matter the cost, man. That what kind of love that my parents had to do that. Leaving everything that they knew, like Abraham, leaving everything behind and going on. They didn't even have a house ready or prepared. We were just going, packed all of our stuff, left. I thought they were crazy. And so we get to Tennessee. Sure enough, I get involved with the wrong crowd down there eventually, and it's just a cycle, a vicious cycle over and over of addiction, which leads to around 2014. And in 2014, something rock bottom happened. I had thought that I had hit rock bottom before, but this was my absolute rock bottom. And I had almost died 3 times up to this point. And this time I knew something was different. And if you've ever been or had anybody around you that's gone through addiction, you know what I'm saying. You get to a certain point where it's like, okay, something's bad is about to happen. I'm either about to die or something tragic is going to happen if I don't get out of this now. And as far as the spiritual end of it, I was at a place where I felt like God was saying, like, this is it, Brad. This is the end of the rope. Like, the buck stops here. And literally, I remember my dad looking at me and saying, "Brad, the buck stops here." And so but being stubborn in my addiction and in my ways, I go out to a party even after hitting this just low place, and which leads to the rock bottom. And so I go out to this party and I leave knowing that I shouldn't be driving, and I wreck the car and total it. And at this point, I'm facing significant time in jail or in prison. And my wife comes and she bails me out. And now I've got all of this that I'm thinking about. And so what do? In my stubbornness, I go on yet another rampage after being bailed out of jail. Just nonstop, just go, 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 vicious cycle. And so I end up back with my wife, and I'm so sideways and so gone out of my mind that she doesn't even know what to do with me. She's like, God, I can't do this anymore. We were at the point of divorce, letting go of everything, separating, being done. She couldn't do it no more. I didn't care if I lived another day. It just didn't care anymore. And when you walk through this type of addiction, you get to a place where it's just like you're sick every day, and you got to find your fix for that day to get back to a place of normalcy, and it gets exhausting, and the enemy knows this bondage wears people out, and that's how he uses it against us. And so I'm sitting in the car with my wife, and she has 3 options that she's thinking about. She shared with me. She said, I could either take you to jail and drop you off so they would lock you up and let you sober up again. But I knew you had already just done that. It wouldn't do anything. I could take you to an inpatient rehab again, drop you off and hope that you stay, or I could take you to mom's house. At this point, she knew that my mom was a praying mama, and she knew that it was the best option to take me there, and something she felt to take me there over anywhere else, over hospital, over anywhere. So we get out to mom's house, and I can't even get out of the car. I don't remember much about the night, to be completely honest with you. It was very foggy, but I remember bits and pieces. I remember getting out of the car, not being able to stand up, and I remember Christina put my arm around her like this, and she literally carried me into the house. I couldn't even walk. I'm holding on to her. My wife, how embarrassing is this? My wife is carrying me into the house because I'm so sideways. My mom comes to the door like, what is happening? And Christina lays me down on the ground, and she's like, your son, like, this is it. I can't do it no more. Like, something has to change. This has to stop. And I began shaking uncontrollably on the ground. I was seconds away from going into cardiac arrest. I'm telling you, I believe with all my heart, this was it. This was the absolute rock bottom. And my mom looked at me, and she even said that she feared I was about to die. And I remember what happened next was so powerful. I remember my mom stretched her hand out at me, and she said, Satan, you cannot have my son. This is my promise. This is my child. He's going to rise up and declare the name of the Lord. You cannot have him. Take your hands off of him, Satan. It was so powerful. Never to this day have I seen such a powerful prayer. And when she prayed it, something snapped, something changed, something was broken in the spiritual realm. And the reality is, Scripture tells us that it's not a fight against flesh and blood, guys. We want to fight these things in the natural. But my mom understood in that moment, as my wife understood. She had to get me there. And she understood in that moment that this was a spiritual battle more than anything that leads to physical, but they understood the spiritual battle. And mom took authority in that moment over the enemy. Something broke. I can tell you this, after that prayer, after my mom prayed that prayer, and something snapped and something changed, all of a sudden I found myself, I had a passion and a desire to want to change. You got to remember, up until this point, I didn't care if I lived another moment, another day. Now, all of a sudden, I have this desire. I'm like, what? I'm waking up the next day like I have this desire to be changed, to be a better human, to follow God, to learn about him and his love. And all of a sudden, my desires begin to change, all from the power of a prayer from a mom praying. When I think back on my story, it's incredible that I made it. It's unbelievable that I lived. I'm telling you, if not for these chain of events of my wife being obedient to what she felt and taking me to mom's, and then mom taking authority in that moment, I don't think I'd be sitting here with you guys. But she took authority, and all of a sudden, as the weeks and the months and the years began to go by, I began drawing closer to God. And you see, I thought I knew God. And this is also a lesson to anybody listening. You can have a head knowledge of God. I grew up in church, remember? I knew everything about him, but I didn't truly know him until this moment. And when I began to surrender who I was for his plan and truly understand who he is and that he's a God that truly loves me. But before I got to that moment, before I got to the moment of completely surrendering to God, after Mom prayed this prayer, I remember I was sitting at the house and I was thinking about the significant time that I was facing and how I've messed up my life royally and how I didn't know what I was going to do. I've got a family and yet I'm facing all of this time, and God, what has happened to me? And I'm like, God, where are you? Like, if you're real, if you're the God that my parents have taught me about all my life, if you're a real God that saves, if you're a God that loves, then where are you? Because I don't feel you. I feel abandoned. I feel alone. I don't feel you in my life, and I don't see you in my life. All I see is addiction and struggles and heartache. Where are you? And guys, in this moment, I'm telling you, I've never heard the voice of God up until this point so clearly. And in that moment, he spoke these words, and it just kept ringing in my mind, and it was like a mental impression. It wasn't like a loud, audible voice. I tell people this all the time. It was just a very small whisper, a mental impression. And he said, Brad, when you feel me the least, I am moving the most. And that kept replaying in my mind. Brad, when you feel me the least, I'm moving the most. And now when I do worship online, we all post that, as I sing this song, because these lyrics are in the song. I'd put them in the song of Greater Is He, that it says, when I feel you the least, God, I know that's when you're moving the most. And so I wrote this down as I heard it ringing in my mind. I wrote this down in my journal, not even really truly or fully understanding it in that moment. And I knew that God had given me this word. I just didn't know what it meant. And then later on, I've held on to this word through every season of my life. When hard struggles have come and I've had times where I could have went back to addiction, I have held this word. The scripture talks about a fitly word is like gold. Well, this was a word that was appointed at this time in this moment, and I needed it. And if not, I wouldn't have made it. And I'm so thankful that even in my stubbornness, even in my unforgiveness, even in my struggle and ignorance, that God understood me and that he chose to speak to me anyway. How incredible and powerful is that in my sin, a loving God spoke to me. And it just goes with scripture to say, even while we were yet sinners, Christ came and he died for us. And so I'm changing each and every day, and now I'm facing the courts, and that's a whole other story, but God brought me through all of that, and I was able to write a letter to the person that I had hit in their vehicle and make these things right. And I was able to even speak to the officers later on and make that right. And God gave me every opportunity to make these things right in my life years later. And I'm so thankful that I had those times and those moments. And he delivered. I never did go away for a significant time. I had to go for a little bit, but God truly came and intervened, and people seen even in the courts that I was changed, that something had happened. And while there's consequences for everything we do, guys, and there was consequences for this, but they could see that obviously God was doing something in my life. It was very evident. And so I go on. I'm married at this point. Now God restores my marriage. He's restoring my family. We go on to have even more children. I'm so blessed, and we end up getting a new home and some vehicles that we need and some jobs and working in ministry, and Christina finishing out her degree, my wife, and just blessings. We are just blessed. God has blessed us. It's crazy. We don't deserve it. I don't deserve it. I don't deserve any of it, but God has chose to bless us, and I'm so grateful and thankful. Every day that I wake up, I'm thankful and I'm grateful. And through all of the struggles, through everything that I've walked through, one thing is for sure. people never gave up praying for me. And my mom would stand in the gap praying, and she would speak scripture and she would speak life all throughout my struggles. She would constantly remind me and say, Brad, greater is he who lives in me than he who's in the world. There's nothing that you're facing. There's no circumstance, Brad, that God is not bigger, that he's not better, that he's not greater than. So you just trust him. And she would speak this into my life. And then she would say, Brad, it's not by might, it's not by power, but it's by the Spirit of the Lord. It's nothing that you can do. It's all in what he can do. It's his authority. It's his power. And she would constantly remind me of these truths so that I would understand, like, man, yes, it's nothing that I can do. It's God and his greatness. I'm not delivered and set free right now because of me. It's because of his goodness. It's because of his love. It's because of his mercy and his greatness. And so that led me in 2018, 2019 to begin writing a song to kind of, tip my hat to Mom and what she has spoken to my life and how she has stood in the gap and prayed for me, and also to speak to God in the word that he gave me in an appointed time, in a season that I needed it, that literally changed the trajectory of my life. It's called Greater Is He. No weapon formed against me now will ever stand in my way. And when I'm weak, Spirit rise in me, rise up in me. Greater is he who lives in me than he who's in the world. I will not fear, for you are here, now and forevermore. And greater is he, and greater is he. It's not by might, it's not by power, but by the Spirit of the Lord. The enemy, he has been defeated. Oh, I am free. Greater is he who lives in me than he who's in the world. I will not fear, for you are here, now and forevermore. Greater is he, and greater is he. When I feel you the least, I know you're moving the most. I know you're working in me. So I will not be shaken, and I will not be moved by what I see. When I feel you the least, I know you're moving the most. I know you're working in me. So I will not be shaken, and I will not be by what I see. Greater is He who lives in me than he who's in the world. I will not fear, for you are here, now and forevermore. Greater is, greater is, greater is He. Greater is, greater is, greater is He in me. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. If you've hung on this long watching all of these stories and songs, I hope that it was an encouragement to you. I hope that it blessed you. And I just wanted to do this today to give a very special shout out to all the moms and to say Happy Mother's Day. You don't know how important you are. I'm so grateful. I'm telling you, I would not be sitting here right now talking to you had it not been for a mom that sat things aside and would stand in the gap and pray for her son. And I'm forever and eternally grateful. And so don't give up praying. All you moms out there, keep praying for your kids, keep praying for your family, keep praying for your communities, keep taking these things to God in prayer. And I know that you carry yourself these burdens and you carry these things and these weights, and you moms are so strong. It's like I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, I don't even know how you do everything that you do. Like, I don't understand it. Like, I'm just thinking about everything that you do and I get overwhelmed. And so you guys are incredibly strong. I don't understand it. You're like super women, but I just wanted to come and say, keep praying, because even you as super women need God. And I believe that's why you're super women, because God hears your prayers. So keep praying. Happy Mother's Day.